The Jeffrey Epstein scandal is perhaps the darkest story in recent global politics. It's a story that involves power and money, crimes of a sexual nature against very young underage girls, allegations of a cover up at the highest level. And now it's back in the news because something unprecedented is about to happen in the United States. The House of Representatives in the US is preparing to vote on a bill that could force the release of thousands of papers of files from the Epstein Files that have been locked away by the Justice Department for years. Now, people suspect that these files could actually contain evidence of wrongdoing of some very powerful people, or at least association to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, in a very dramatic twist, President Donald Trump, who up until now, until very recently, was resisting the release of these documents, has suddenly demanded that the House of Republicans release every file. So, who's likely to be named in the Epstein Files and what will happen if it gets released? That's what we're looking at in this video. Now, if you don't know already, who was Jeffrey Epstein? He was a very powerful, wealthy American financier who moved in powerful and wealthy circles, spent most of his time between New York and Florida, which meant that he was in overlapping social circles with Donald Trump, who's a New Yorker who had property in Florida. Now, in 2006, Epstein was first charged with molesting a 14-year-old girl after her parents came forward and filed the complaint. He could have gone to jail for life. Instead, he managed very curiously to get away with only 13 months in jail. And that is where the story begins, as to how he managed to get away with such a small sentence. In July 2019, though, he was arrested again. This time for allegedly trafficking dozens of teenage underage girls and paying them for sex. Now, prosecutors say he ran a system that ensured a steady supply of minor victims to rich and powerful men. Now, in August 2019, while he was in jail awaiting trial, he was found dead in his prison cell. This raised a lot of questions about the fact that his death was ruled a suicide very quickly. But the questions remained as to what he might have known, who he might have named, and why and how he died under such mysterious circumstances. His longtime partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, is currently serving a 20-year sentence in prison for helping him sexually abuse minors and helping him sort of groom and find their victims. Now, this is where everything stands. So what is in the Epstein Files? Now, there were two major federal investigations into the Epstein scandal, and they produced a massive volume of material, documents which include interviews and statements by victims and witnesses, staff in various properties that may have been around when this was happening, emails between Epstein and Maxwell and various other people who they met on a social level, internal FBI and Justice Department communications, seized evidence from Epstein's homes, flight logs of his private jet and who was on those flights, photographs, contact books, and documents related to his death in custody. Now, much of this has never been released in public, and the unreleased material, thousands of papers, collectively called the Epstein Files, is what Congress wants to release right now. Now, in the past, there have been releases. Up till now, some of the papers have come out, and that includes court filings, logs, real estate records. Several high-profile names have appeared in these pages already. They include the former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who then lost all of his titles. In fact, when he was currently stripped of his final title and his royal residence, it was out of maybe trepidation or fear as to what will come out in these documents. Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Larry Summers, Steve Bannon, actors, models, bankers, people from the fashion and tech industries. Again, being named in these documents, I must point out, does not actually mean or confirm involvement in crime. It means that these were social and professional associations. But a lot of these people have denied even knowing him. And that's where these stories don't match. But in public interest, the public interest is very high. Epstein's social circle crossed into politics, into royalty, tech, and finance because several accusations over the years have raised questions of who knew what and who looked the other way or participated. Now, what has happened recently? 12th November this year, the US House Oversight Committee, which is doing its own investigation, released an additional 20,000 pages of Epstein estate documents, mostly emails. And this is what stood out in those emails based on what has been reported. There's one email that actually quotes Trump, and I'm quoting here, Trump blowing Bubba. Bubba. It was written by Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein. Bubba is a long-time nickname used for Bill Clinton because of his history as the governor of Arkansas. It's normally used, as a term of endearment for small boys in Southern America. And so that's a nickname for Bill Clinton that sort of stuck. The context is unclear, but it set off a wave of speculation online. And this is part of now the November document dump. But other emails, a 2017 email in which Epstein calls Trump, and I'm quoting, the worst person he has ever known, so yes, very dangerous. Another email referencing the girls and the social interactions in Epstein's home. There's a 2011 email confirming that Virginia Giuffre, in that photo with Prince Andrew, remember, Virginia Giuffre was one of the main accusers of Prince Andrew. She accused him of having sexual interactions with her on 3 different occasions while she was still a minor. Epstein wrote that, and I'm quoting, yes, she was on my plane, and yes, she had her picture taken with Andrew. Now, this contradicts Andrew's claim that he never met her at all, and that picture was in fact doctored. There were also emails involving Larry Summers and Steve Bannon. Larry Summers was an advisor to Bill Clinton, both appearing in discussions and contact and threads. Neither of them have been accused of any wrongdoing in these documents. And there are apparently drafts of party guests and travel discussions, including a discussion about flying 8 top girls to Ibiza or to Paris for a party, referencing modeling agencies previously linked with trafficking allegations. These emails do not prove any criminal acts, but they deepen questions about Epstein's entire social network, his contacts, the nature of his relationship with these powerful people. So why is Congress demanding these files now? Now, here's the interesting thing. While Donald Trump is one of the people who's been named in these, files or has been associated with Epstein because there are photographs and videos of the two of them together, this is not pressure that's coming from his opposition. This is pressure that's coming from his own party. It's coming from within. So actually, a bipartisan group of lawmakers, both Republican and Democrat, have introduced something called Epstein Files Transparency Act, because they believe that the House leadership was being very slow. They were sort of dragging their feet on releasing those documents. And so all Democrats and 4 Republicans signed a petition. They have 218, on the final signature, 218 signatures came on the 13th of November in order to bring a vote. And the vote is scheduled for tonight to release these documents. Now, the bill says basically that the Justice Department must release all Epstein-related documents, all FBI communications, his prison death investigation files, and the documents must be made public in 30 days in a searchable, downloadable format, which will basically, make it available to the general public. Now, here's a key line. It says the Justice Department cannot redact or basically cover up any names because the information may cause embarrassment, reputation harm, or political sensitivity, even to government officials, public figures, and foreign dignitaries. Victims' identities can be protected. So there actually seems like there are Republicans pushing for a release that could hurt their own president. Now, this is where we start talking about Donald Trump. Until last week, Donald Trump had opposed this bill. His allies actively tried stopping Republicans from supporting it. But once the petition crossed 218 signatures and it felt that it was inevitable, it's going to go through, Trump has reversed his position overnight, saying they should release every single page. We have nothing to hide. Advisors have told him that opposing the release will make him seem like he has something to hide. MAGA influencers were furious with his opposition because this somehow became a really important conversation during the election of Donald Trump into his second term. Supporting transparency could help him move past the scandal faster. Now, what will happen? Will this bill pass? It seems almost inevitable that it will. The real challenge is the Senate, where it needs 60 votes. Republicans hold a 53-47 majority. So one doesn't know whether it will pass the Senate. It will pass, of course, the House. And after that, it will go to President Trump to sign. And he says he will sign if it comes to his desk. Why do people care so much about these Epstein files? Because Epstein sort of, more than a criminal case, he represents systemic rot inside the system. So he's a man who systematically, through a structure, exploited underage girls, not only for his own enjoyment, but also for the enjoyment of his friends. He supplied these underage girls to his friends at his various properties and his jets. And it's all about wealth and influence and silence. And he got away with it for so long. So the questions of how did he get such a lenient deal back in 2006? Who helped him? Who knew about it? Why did the system fail its victims? And these are victims, incidentally, that stretch across various countries. They're not just American. And how did he die in federal custody under such basically suspicious circumstances? So these are questions that people want to know, because it would basically suggest that the US law and justice system is completely rotten on the inside. So everybody's holding their breath. And I'll remind you that King Charles in the UK actually removed his brother as prince. He removed him from all his royal homes and from all activities, because these papers were most likely going to come out. So it's very interesting to find out what's actually going to happen and what's going to be in these papers. But one thing I do agree with, that the truth must come out, because at the end of the day, the idea, this medieval idea that powerful, wealthy, largely white men, that powerful, wealthy men can use their power and wealth to abuse young girls because that's something they have a fancy for, and get away with it, is completely disgusting in any part of the world. And what is really shocking is that there are now media representatives who support MAGA and Donald Trump who are actually going out and saying that 15 is not that young. It's almost legal, or it's like barely legal. It's not actually the same as a 9-year-old. And to me, that's disgusting, right? Because at the end of the day, the idea of consent and age consent is because it simply means that when someone is underage, that they can be coerced, they can be forced, and they're not in a full position to exercise all of their rights. So I do hope that the Epstein Files are made public and people are brought to justice, at least through public knowledge. Let me know what you think, what's likely to happen tonight and what's likely to be in those papers.